We bring to you poems from Lal Ded, Vaakhs as they are known as. Lal Ded was a mystic, spiritual poet from the Kashmir area, and uh, much of her poetry, uh, most of her poetry was unwritten and hence known as the Vaakhs, which come from um, unwritten and in speech form. Um, Lal Ded has been a much revered poet through this time and through history, um, an enduring figure for all sorts of religion and all lovers of poetry. This evening we bring to you Arvind Gigoo, who is Siddhartha Gigoo's um, father, his translations of Lal Ded, brought to you by Om Books International. What is special about this particular translation is that it is Arvind Gigoo's own take on not only translated version, but also to a certain extent his own take on an interpretation of the Vaakhs. As many of you would know, many of the saints like Tukaram, like Kabir, um, much of their poetry becomes an interpretive and integrated poetry over the years, with many others writing in their names. So you have people who are writing Kabir Kahat, Tukaram says, and so the poetry goes. So it is with Lal Ded also. In that sense, it is a truly immersive experience. And for Siddharth, who lost his father recently, this is an emotional journey. Siddharth himself is, of course, a much acclaimed writer. So Siddharth, please introduce the Vaakhs and your father's translation.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible. First of all, thank you so much, Maitreyee. It means a lot to me that I'm sharing the stage with you as an opportunity to kind of represent my father. And thank you, Shantanu, for publishing the book. And thank you, Karthik, who is the executive editor of Penguin Random House, who brought out a memoir, which is not my book. It's a memoir of a family who gets displaced from their ancestral homeland, Kashmir, in 1990. At the time, I was 15 years old. I'm 52 now. Still carrying that darkness inside, perhaps might never go away. So before of course, as I stand here before all of you, I'm just wondering how to represent my father, whom I lost last year, still dealing with that loss, conscious that it's still a tribute to all of you, all of us together who have lost their loved ones, who have lost their parents. I had a beautiful relationship with my father. So he's a poet, painter, taught literature and philosophy in Kashmir, taught generations from 1965 until 1990 in Kashmir, then got displaced. Taught literature, poetry especially, in a camp college in Udhampur. And a camp college is nothing but a college set up for the displaced Kashmiri Pandits for 10 years until his retirement. So in Kashmir, I knew him as a poet, and I knew him as a painter. He was an artist. He was also a singer. In exile, he discovered himself, became a sculptor, translator, anthologist, and author. So this is my father, 1965, 20 years old, in Kashmir, smiling. After his death, in September, I took my mom back to our house in Jammu. My father bought a house 15 years after getting displaced from Kashmir, a small house. He had sent all the books to me in Delhi. So I discovered this diary dated 1965, which is 20 years old, as a college student perhaps. studying in SP College, very famous college in Srinagar. And I read some of his earliest poetry. So this is us, the Gigoo family, 1980 perhaps. It's a beautiful photograph. I must have been 7 or 8 years old. That's my sister, my grandfather, my grandmother, who perished in exile in the most difficult circumstances. And this is us in a rented accommodation next to a camp where I went to study 10th and 11th, which is a camp school. And that's our home, father's bedroom. He was a smoker, he loved smoking. 1984, I'm sleeping next to him. And this is 2022 when my sister went to the old home, which is no longer ours, and she took this picture. Belongs to a Kashmiri Muslim family. We sold off our home many years later. So 1990 was a turning point, in our lives, because we suddenly found ourselves like 500,000 Kashmiri Pandits displaced, almost nowhere to go. Most of them got settled in camps. Settled is not the right word. In Jammu, a lot of camps were set up, and a few camps were set up in Udhampur, where he took to sculpting, And this is, I think, where the idea, Udhampur became this crucible of the displaced Kashmiri Pandit poets. Most of them from Anantnag, district Anantnag. Until 1990 at home, the poetry was all about nature and romance and philosophy and beauty and bhakti, But after 1990, it was about the state of being homeless. It was about alienation. So most of this poetry was in Kashmiri. And we used to have these gatherings next to a camp, one of the rented accommodations in the evenings, day after day, week after week, month after month. And they all looked at my father and said that a day is going to come, nobody is going to read this poetry in Kashmiri, which is true because the language Kashmiri, it's almost, for those of us outside Kashmir, but that way of life is over. So he said, day is going to come years from now that nobody will know what we went through. So he started translating this Kashmiri poets, the displaced Kashmiri Pandit poets. So one of the poets he translated, Shri Arjan Dev Majboor, is very, very towering. He died a very sad death. Almost all of them died a sad death, and they all longed back to, they all wanted to die in their homes in Kashmir. That's not meant to be. Coming back to last year when I went and opened my father's drawer, so I discovered that diary, 1965, as a college student. And I read for the first time what my father wrote as a college student. I remember how in modesty the water lilies drooped into your sapphire-like eyes. For me, the lure in you was that you had no lure in you. Who knows how many marble Taj, smiling of the Jamuna banks of my eyelids, have trembled. How many pigeons of promise and fear flew away from the falling marble pillars. If a gold ring suffers a crack in a jewel, a new diamond can shine. The heart is not a jewel. When broken, can make a choice. It's simply hard. It can weep but not console the self. Enjoy the fruit of conscience but sell the soul. I died long back and lay buried like a butterfly caught by chance between the pages of a book. And then this beautiful long exile poem, which is a masterpiece in Kashmiri, to the Swan. So our chat is titled, The Swan Returns Home. So the swan is just us, each one of us, who from those camps, day after day, week after week, prayed and dreamed that we'll just become swans and we'll fly our homes. That was not meant to be. Of course, the dark decade of the 90s, Kashmir, none of us were able to go back home. I opened my heart to the swan, sat him on the chariot of my liquid memories, made him recollect the heavenly green spot. I wove a wreath of past events. You will measure darkness with light. Your smiling, innocent childhood, yours is my strength. Yours is my necklace of pearls. I held a mirror of time, showed him the scarred hush of my being. His thoughts sped past, and in ecstasy he ruffled up his wings. Then I said, yours is infinite freedom. Glide in the sky and inspect the world that was once mine. Fly over the mountain peaks and find out the source of light. Be careful when you see the blinding light. If you get tired, rest on the golden hay on a hilltop. Spread your wings in the sun and call up your old pathways. Your resting place will come. You will breathe in the sweet air away from the city. Bliss will be yours. From afar, they will say, look, that is a tiny bird on the wing or a morning lotus in the lake. You will hear meaning in the tune of the lute. The goal is distant, but you will reach the blooms. Plead with the cliffs for the time, and cool sleeping nights are yours. Choose carefully. Separate the true from the untrue. View all and come back with truth. I will take the sanctuary for you and hug you at the diamond-studded gate. You will see infinite blossoms and green patches. You will feel icy winds wash up shy bushes at sundown. The angels in white descend and whisper honeyed truth. Get me an image of the scene. Get me sweet water. Somewhere water is ready for a tango in the past. Kings, courtiers, and travelers drank there. Saints counted beads on rosaries, and hermits meditated, a place for all to go into a trance, implore all to restore peace in the valley, to cure all aching wounds, and to end grief. Ancient ruins are asleep. Awaken them with a woeful tale. Murmur my agony when splendor glistened, when glory ruled, when wisdom flourished, when strength held fast time, and eagle flies. Catch it. Step over the spot. Fetch me a swig of water, for I'm parched. So this dialogue between the displaced poet with this swan, who he sees every day. All of us dreamt that we should become the swans, and some flight of fancy, despite the turmoil, almost increasingly it was looking impossible that we will ever go back, except that we were clinging to that hope. And sits my father with driftwood he got from a stream in Udhampur, the river Chenab, and he starts sculpting. In 2003, while he was very sick, I took him back to the college. This is the degree college. It was the same. Took a few pictures. Then he started translating each Kashmiri displaced poet, and they all. And we used to have these baithaks, right through those 2 decades, almost every other day. Even after I came to Delhi, used to go back there, and we would sing and we would recite poetry, hoping that a day would come that he would stand here and other displaced poets, then they would get to narrate that story. And the story is a tragic story. Then Dinanath Nadim ji is also a towering Kashmiri poet, translated much of his Kashmiri poets into English. And my father's own books, The Ugly Kashmiri, which is cameos, From Home to House, which was published, anthology of writings from Kashmiri Pandits, Gulliver in Kashmir. So my address, people ask us, what's your address? You're from Kashmir. Or do you live in Bangalore now? Or Delhi, or Bombay? But our address is somewhere out there. The government of India still pays a relief of 10,000 to the displaced Pandits who have no jobs. 10,000 rupees every month. For the first 10 years, it was 600 rupees, a tattered tent, 1 kilo of rice, half a kilo of atta, knowing that Kashmiri Pandits are rice eaters, and a little bit of sugar for 10 years. Now it's 10,000 rupees. 36 hours. He gave me freedom for 36 hours because in 1989-90, I think there was this diktat Kashmiri Pandits must leave the valley, published in almost all the leading dailies. Kashmiri Pandits, we give you 36 hours to leave, or else face consequences. So I gave him freedom forever. So my father, that's a sculpture. I asked him, I said, what is this? A dancing person. It could be a dancing person, a dancer in exile. Maybe somebody like Lal Ded who danced. So Lal Ded spoke to him as she spoke to many of us. Her Vaakhs is a Kashmiri word for verses. And that other piece of sculpture, I asked him, what is that? He said, it's an exilee. The exilee, and I think this became the inspiration because Lal Ded is believed to have, the 14th century. After her marriage, and she was just a young girl, her in-laws ill-treated her, perhaps did not understand her. She's just a girl who's looking for love. And then she meets her guru, who initiates her into the Shaivite philosophy, into Vedanta, into mysticism. And she strips, and she's naked, And she's believed to have jumped into this baker's oven, and she's come out swathed in flames, And that's the time when Shah Hamdan came from Hamdan, and there was this first time when Islam was introduced in Kashmir. She stood naked, and with her bhakti, and with her questions, Master, how should I live? What should we do, Master? What is life and what is death? No answers to this question. What if I'm wrong and what if I'm right, So for around 20 years, I asked my father, how should the cover of the book be? He said, nothing, it should be blank, So Lal Ded became this Zen mystic and Zen dancer, just a line, And this is the cover of the book. I, a pot, desire home, songs of the naked poet, So translation, after a point, my father said, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just merely a negotiator and mediator between the poet and her readers. It's a performance to bridge the distance between two cultures. So I happened to write an introduction to the book. It's just me sitting cross-legged next to my father for decades and hearing from him. And he had these several notebooks, which finally I typed them, and then, So there is Amipan Sadaras Navichas Laman Katipos Daimyon Mediti Tar Amen Taken Bones and Shaman Zoshuk Brahman Garagasta. So this is an image, for those of you who know Kashmiri. So the image of a river, and this is little Lal Ded, maybe 15 years old. And she's faced rejection. And she's pulling a boat with a fine thread, hoping to go over to the other side, And the other side is home. So during our exile camp days, we all longed for that home. So for my father and me, I think Lal Ded was just a girl looking for a home where there's love. So it's this lifelong, engagement and the curiosity for the unknown and the unknowable. Last 2 years, my father had nothing to say. So I would call him, I would meet him, I would say, how should I live if I lose you? He said, be brave. Always have a curiosity for the unknown. Nothing can be explained. So Lal Ded's poetry, or Kabir's poetry, or Rumi's poetry, or any poetry it can just be read and recited when you sit in silence at home and you become your own listener. And then I think Lal Ded appears, or Kabir appears, or Bulle Shah appears, or Baba Farid appears, or Rumi, they all appear. So it appeals to me. I just thought I would paint a picture. It's a very short picture of a lifetime spent in beautiful homes in Kashmir. It's a tribute to all of those who have lost, and we still long for that. And to my father, who for 30 years used pen and paper and polishing and understanding Lal Ded, and kind of gave citizenship in English. Thank you so much. Thank you, Maitreyee. I will do my best to answer some questions. I am in a very strange situation to represent my father who is not there.
Thanks, Siddharth. So, those of you who are familiar with translation will agree that, to be a translator is to almost inhabit another body, um, feel another's pain, feel another's language, and become part of it. So, Siddharth, since you've already seen your father not only in lots of pain, a sort of anxiety and overwhelmed with emotion, how has all of that added to his journey as a translator in finding Lal Ded at her words and translating it, that poetry, even while going through his own journey of pain? What do you think? That did he change as a person, as a translator, as a poet? How did this journey pan out?
So he used to quote this Italian saying that, translators are traitors, Yeah. Because Lal Ded never wrote 14th century. She's believed to have just sung, these verses. And there's not much, just perhaps, 200, 250 verses. And so I saw my father almost every day. So it's like, those of you who remember the William Butler Yeats' Adam's Curse, we sat together at one summer's end. That beautiful, my woman, your close friend, and you and I talked of poetry. I said a line will take us hours maybe. And here, a line would take not just hours, or days, or weeks, or months, took years, So they were, by the end of it, there were something like 300 notebooks, So how should we narrate a picture, say for instance, I tamed the horse and held my breath. I tamed the horse, and held. So Lal Ded speaks of this horse, but it's not the English horse. And Lal Ded speaks of this breath. It's not the English word breath. Lal Ded speaks of this hardness. It's not that English word tame, So then I think for years together he delved into this thing. What if Lal Ded was alive this time, maybe 15 years old, and she knew English, and how would she perform in English, So it became this 15-year-old, 20-year-old girl, she's singing these songs in English, The sun melted, the moon melted into the mind melted into nothingness, time melted into the void, Came a time when my father said we should not even publish it, because who knows will Lal Ded approve of this, And then should we include the Kashmiri text as well? There's no script, as you know, Kashmiri. So it's either written in the Devanagari or the Nastaliq, Kashmiri Muslims claim her, they call her Lalla Arifa, as you know. Kashmiri Pandits call her Lalleshwari or Lal Ded. Then she talks of Ayas Vate, Gayas Navate. Then she talks of, Hindi में उसको बोलते हैं Ayas Vate, मैं आई तो सीधे रास्ते, पर मैं सीधे रास्ते जा नहीं पाई. Ayas Vate, Gayas Navate. The coming is straight, the return labyrinthine. Vuchuk Chandas har na athe. When I just surveyed my pocket, I had no money. So, but she's not talking of money. Har. She's talking of a cowrie shell, which those days was used for barter. Vuchuk Chandas har na athe. Ath navitaras dimbukya. And then there is this boat and the boatman who is telling me, I would like you to give me and pay me if I help you cross this river. The coming is straight, the return labyrinthine, and then the evening. And she talks of this evening. And she talks of this, there's an image, this evening must end. And time is speeding past, but that evening will not end. The pocket empty, the ferryman give and cross, give and cross. The crossing, then the crossing. Empty, I'm bewildered. So she's leaving us with these questions. What if I'm right? And she, Guru, you said this. Master, you said this. Because the master is certain. Because the master is a Shaivite scholar. He's certain that one must leave this body and you must embrace the unknown and become part of that spirit, and you express yourself by there is no death, there is no fear, there is no love, there is no piety, there is no sin. But she's saying, what if, master, what if master? She's asking herself, So Lal Ded speaks to everybody, each one of us, and she leaves us with those, and we put ourselves in that context, and it's a wonderment, it's a sense of wonderment. So my father, for years after years, he was, Zu Chumbraman Gargasa, Zu, it's my, my heart is longing, it's longing for home. And then she's talking of a pot. She's talking, there is rain, it's raining, somewhere at the river bank there's this potter, and he's doing pottery on a river, pottery is falling and the spots are not becoming the pots. What if I am one of those pots? I, a pot, desire home. And this master says that you are already home. So the concept of home, so my father, through his personal journey, even until when he was on the deathbed, he said to me, he said, that house is still ours? While he's on an ICU, with his eyes, how should I as a son answer that house is still ours? That house so that longing, it cannot be explained or understood. I'm still at a position where I'm trying to grapple with this, and that loss must not go away. No matter what, there is no moving on. And Lal Ded came to rescue in strange ways, I was working with Shantanu in a cafe. We were trying to just enjoy while he's preparing the book for publishing. And he said that Lal Ded is speaking to me as well. I was working with Karthik on my memoir, of which my father is the hero because it was his journey, seeing him brave, and talking of poetry because he taught philosophy at the School of Buddhist Philosophy in Leh, Western philosophy. And he said, all this is transient, it will all fade away. A day is going to come, if I'm not there, you'll be narrating a story, But it'll be a story of thousands and thousands of people who have lost. You will always lose, So how do you translate grief? So it used to be a constant dialogue about the philosophy of language itself. Philosophy of language. Here, the inadequacy of the English language, Because Lal Ded offered those images.
Yeah. Which brings me to the question, Siddharth. You have seen your father go through these various stages of grief, of exile, etc. As a writer yourself, as a very well-established writer yourself, what do you think through this book is not only the lineage, but the connection of grief and homelessness with that of Lal Ded's poems or Vaakhs, and how has it mirrored in your own journey in finding home, or in at least being reassured of a distant home somewhere out there?
When my grandmother was, I think, dying, I took a 2-day trip to Kashmir as a tourist, and I called her from there. And she said, I heard you are home. Suchuk Kargum, you are home. So that home. I say my grandfather, and I can speak for all Kashmiri Pandits who still go as tourists, And then because Lal Ded speaks of that home, it's still a matter of curiosity. What is home finally? Where do we go? Poetry, it's all exile poetry, And then one doesn't need to read pages and pages. So it's just a verse, 3 lines, 4 lines, a book by the bedside, catch the melting icicle, catch the wind, It speaks to us in different ways. I think I would urge all of you to just, not just this book. There is a lot of Lal Ded found on internet, especially a lot of people have kind of sung her, performed her. And I speak to you in different ways, And then perhaps a day will come when you will also be faced with that, like many of us, with the question is that, what is the point of it all? The memory plays a big part because all we have is the past. It belongs to us, nobody can snatch it, And this uncertain future that we'll all leave behind these stories, which is our history.
Yeah, and on that note, as we face more and more uncertain times today in this chaotic world, maybe we can go back to Lal Ded, find her poetry, whether in translation or not. Please go out and buy copies of the book. It's available outside. If you want, Siddhartha can sign it for you on behalf of his father. But please read more poetry in translation. And let's find the Lal Ded, who is a metaphor for all of us who are migrants in search of lost homes. Let us find her and let us read more of her. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.